I mean, here she's got this snake who, comes across like a stallion promising her the world. Man, if you just take a bite of this apple, it's going to change your life. I kind of get it. With Eve, and again, how, you sure your husband really even heard right? But why would Adam eat the fruit? Like Adam, he knows the risk. Like he heard from God. Like he knows if I eat this, this could be bad news. This could be like a scene from Snow White. I mean, this is not a good deal. And yet he still decides to take a bite. And I was thinking about this, and I think this is again so true, and I think kind of the reason kind of gets to the heart of why he would be willing to eat this fruit. And that's that, well, listen, and of course, by the way, too, speaks to kind of the value and the importance of speaking trust, because when we speak distrust, listen, it speaks something about your belief in that person. And listen, if your spouse doesn't believe in you, get this, at some point you won't either. If your spouse doesn't believe in you, at some point you won't either. And so Adam is like, man, you think I'm crazy. You think I'm incapable of leading this family. You think I'm incapable of hearing from God. Well, you know what? Maybe I am. Maybe I am. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe I didn't hear God the way I thought I heard him. Maybe I am incapable, but maybe I am inadequate. And so Adam eats this fruit, even knowing that it would kill him, even knowing the cost. Because again, if your spouse doesn't believe in you, if your spouse doesn't speak trust into your life but chooses the avenue of distrust, at some point, if your spouse doesn't believe in you, you won't either. You won't either. See, I think way too often we grossly underestimate the power of our words, especially over our spouse. It's funny. It's like, we seem to understand the power of words when it comes to kids. Like, we're watchful of what we say around our kids. It's like when it comes to little Johnny, it's like, little Johnny, you can do anything. And then Big Johnny's like, you can do nothing right. It knows the contrast, right? And look, I get the pushback too. Okay, trust. Like, you want me to put trust in my husband? You want me to put trust in this guy? Come on. Like, and you don't know how he's hurt me. You don't know the things he said. You don't know what he's done. And it'd be kind of the tendency for the guys to be like, yeah, you need to put some trust in me. But I'll say this, guys, kind of speaking directly to the guys here, is listen, guys, before you start amening and like, my wife, she needs to start showing and giving more trust, more trust in me, speaking more trust over me. Look, let's be honest. Sometimes there's a good reason of why your spouse isn't entrusting you more than you would like her to entrust you. Sometimes there's a real reason of why she's not speaking words of trust, and there's a couple reasons for that. One is just broken trust. And listen, guys, if you want to start hearing the words of trust spoken more to you, listen, you and I, we've got to be willing to learn to speak words of apology. If you want to start hearing the words of trust spoken more in your life, we got to be willing to speak the words of apology more, because here's the thing, and I put in my notes, God can't fix what you pretend isn't broken. God can't fix what you pretend isn't broken. So often it's like, especially guys, I think this can be a real struggle. We struggle to say, I'm sorry. We struggle with those words of apology. We struggle with I recognize and I acknowledge that I broke trust here. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, especially for guys. In fact, I was thinking about this here. Here's a kind of an apology note by kid Liam that I think kind of expresses the struggle to apologize. It says, Dear Brody, Miss P made me write you this note. All I want to say sorry for is not being sorry, because I tried to feel sorry, but I don't. Again, talk about... That's a challenge, right? Learning how to apologize. In fact, there was a guy by the name of Ross Jones. He wrote, talks about 4 different levels of apology, and just kind of run through these real quick. But level one apology is where we say, I'm sorry, but, which is really not an apology at all. Whatever follows that but, it just disqualifies the whole validity of that apology, right? You're just justifying at that point. So sometimes it comes out as like, I'm sorry, but I was just in a bad mood that day. Or I'm sorry, but when you did that to me, it just made me so angry, right? Those are not real apologies, right? There's another apology that's kind of along the same line. It's the second level of an apology, and that's I'm sorry if. I'm sorry if, which usually is at least an acknowledgement of the other person, but still a lack of real ownership of what I've done. I'm sorry if your feelings got hurt. I'm sorry if you're really frustrated. And of course, you probably noticed that both of those levels of apology aren't real apologies. They're kind of pretend apologies. Now, a real apology doesn't start to happen until we get to kind of a level 3 apology, which is when we start to say, I'm sorry for. I'm sorry for. It's when I'm willing to finally say aloud and put words to what I've done wrong and to the tension and the broken trust that they're feeling. It's when I say, I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for what I did to you. But listen, if you want to take it to a whole another level, there's the level 4 apology. And this says, I'm sorry and it's really a combo between levels 3 and 4 where it's, I'm sorry for the thing that I did, and here's the steps that I'm going to take to not do that again. I'm sorry for that thing I did when I did it, and I love you and I care for you, and here's what I'm going to do to show you that I'm still very much committed to you. I love you. I want to show you that listen, my heart is with you. I want to do this right. See, that's a true apology. And it's so important. Listen, you want to hear the words of trust, you got to learn to speak the words of apology. You got to learn to speak the words of apology. But I think for some of us, it's not so much a broken trust, while certainly that can be a reason why trust isn't so much given, but oftentimes also neglected trust. Neglected trust, which leads to the second and final kind of temptation of communication, which is disengagement. Disengagement. And again, especially I think, guys, we can struggle a lot with this. See, if for men, if our biggest fear is feeling inadequate and distrust speaks that to us, listen, you got to understand, for ladies, for women, they are afraid of being unloved, and disengagement tells them that. Disengagement tells them that, listen, I don't care, I don't notice, I don't value you. See, and as a result, whereas distrust says, I don't believe you can handle it, disengagement says to a lady, listen, I've got to handle this, because they don't care about this. They don't care about what's going on. Somebody's got to take the lead. Somebody's got to do something about this. And you can really see this picture, this kind of get the sense of disengagement in this story. And we see this in Genesis 3:6. Again, the woman was convinced. She saw the tree was beautiful. She eats the fruit. And then notice towards the end of this, it says, then she gave some to her husband who was with her. He was with her. So often it's like, well, it's Eve's fault, that we struggle with all that we struggle with. But notice Adam was there. Adam was there. Do you ever think about how crazy that is? Here Adam is watching the love of his life, having this conversation with someone he knows is a snake. He named all the animals. He knew that this was not a creature to trust, right? And yet here's Adam just like, there's my wife talking to a snake. We'll go. No big deal. Just totally disengaged, right? And listen, again, I think so often, we wonder, as guys, it's like, man, I want to take the lead, I want to take the charge, but listen, so often why we don't is because of this sense of disengagement. In fact, I put in my notes is that the greatest sin of a man is really passivity. Is passivity. In fact, the greatest sin of a man is you're just so disengaged that you don't even notice what's going on in your own house. You don't even notice what's going on with your own children. You don't even notice that your wife's hurting, that she's broken. And yet, by the way, too, isn't it amazing how we can be so engaged in everything else in our lives, but what's going on with those closest to home? We can be so engaged at work, we can be so engaged at the golf course, and we get home and it's like, man, we just want to sit on the couch. Don't talk to me. I'm done talking. And by the way, this is my biggest struggle. I'll be the first to admit, I struggle with this tendency to just disengage. And yet, I'm telling you, man, this is so important. In fact, for some of you, this could be the very thing that actually saves so many of your marriages, saves so many of your relationships, is re-engaging to the relationship. When you learn to protect your marriage now so you won't have to fight for it later. But by learning to notice, by learning to pay attention, by learning to just be a little bit more aware and a little bit more focused on the love of your life, on this wife, this gift, this blessing of a spouse in your life. And of course, there's a lot of reasons why sometimes we disengage. Sometimes just busyness, sometimes just tiredness, whatever the case is. But I do want to kind of target one main reason, and I think a reason that sometimes we don't always think of when it comes to why so many of us disengage. And not just guys, by the way, too, but sometimes ladies as well when it comes to our relationships. And it's really kind of what we started talking about last weekend. It's all found in this concept of expectations. And in fact, I want to share it with you. And last week I kind of shared with you, everyone's got a picture, kind of their dream person, their dream relationship. Well, we've also all got a list of expectations. In fact, by the way, too, if you're single, I'm about to help you out a lot. You're going to come to understand the thinking behind what a woman really wants and what a man really wants. So again, this is a generalized list, but here's what women want. Women want a man that, I should put it that way, one, makes her laugh. Women want a man who, you don't need to be a comedian. You just need to, occasionally make her grin or smile or something. Romantic and thoughtful. It means, we're instead of just always taking her out to McDonald's, maybe you, dish out a little extra to take her to chalet. Something a little bit more romantic, a little more thoughtful. Think she's pretty 24 hours a day. Listen, guys, if she ever says, how do I look at 2 a.m, listen, the answer is always, you look amazing. You look amazing. There's only one right answer to that. Speaking of that, you got to know she's right all the time. See, I'm telling you, single guys helping you out. Can talk about his feelings. She wants a guy who can not just talk about how work is going, but how you feel work is going. And not just like at 10 in the morning, like when you get home at 5 and maybe sometime in between that, like how do you really feel work is going right now? How do you feel like your boss is really talking to you and treating you right now? Someone could talk about their feelings. Watches HGTV. Yeah, hey, nothing more attractive than, we thought of maybe remodeling this bathroom. Appreciates sales, and then, of course, reads his Bible. All right, so that's the flip side. This is men want a woman that thinks he's hilarious. Laugh, we want you to laugh at our jokes, even if they're not funny. Believes he can do everything, right? Hey, remember that time when I scored the game-winning touchdown? Hey, why don't you tell me that again? Yeah, why don't you share that? Because he knows that she's loved with hearing it. It encourages him to talk about himself. And then never makes him talk about his feelings. I don't have to go into that. Yeah, see? Watches ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN3, ESPN Deportes. Yes. Appreciates savings. So has an appreciation for savings. And then maybe not necessarily reads the Bible, but at least has a Bible. So, but again, these are expectations. And of course, kind of a silly list, but listen, here's why I share that, is that, ever notice our expectations for our spouse, friends, and family are often larger than the expectations we have for ourselves. Ever notice that? Our expectations for our spouse, friends, and family are often larger than the expectations we have for ourselves. And again, we see this so kind of perfectly encapsulated in this story as again, it all goes down, they eat the fruits, and God kind of shows up on the scene. And in verse 11, it says, and he comes up to him, and it says to Adam, he said, who told you were naked? Here they're hiding from God, and I love his response in verse 12. It says, it was the woman. Way to go, Adam. Way to not throw your wife under the bus, right? But he goes, it was the woman who gave me the fruit, and I ate it. And again, by the way, how do you know? So often we say, how do I know if I'm eating from the wrong tree? Listen, this is one of the ways you can know. How do you know if you're eating from the wrong tree, if you're setting yourself up for a bitter relationship or a sweet relationship, is when you end up eating from the wrong tree, ends up with us covering up our mistakes and pointing out our spouse's mistakes. When we start to kind of shift to the blame game, when we put it all on the other person. When we put it all on the other person, that's exactly what Adam's doing. Hey, listen, he's not taking any responsibility for this relationship. He's not taking, putting any of the expectations on himself. It's all about his spouse, what she needs to do, what she could be doing better. It becomes a blame game. And look, I share this with you because again, this is where it kind of starts to change for us. This is where really you can, and not just in a married life, but even in a dating life, again, singles, if you're looking for the perfect and right one, this is where the story starts to change, and you can really kind of set yourself up for God to do some pretty amazing things in your relationship. And we actually see it in Luke chapter 6, verse 31. This is a passage where Jesus kind of talks about relationships, because so often, what's interesting in the Bible, so often we sit there and think, well, hey, I would take some responsibility, I would step up to the plate, I would take some initiative, I would get engaged, I would give some trust. If they didn't do this to me, or they didn't say this to me, they didn't hurt me. But what's interesting about the Bible is never once does God actually talk about how people respond to you, what people do to you. It talks about, listen, what are you going to do for them? It's not the other way around. In fact, we see this, Luke 6, verse 31. It says, here's a simple rule of thumb for behavior. Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, then grab the initiative and do it for them. Isn't that awesome? Ask yourself what you want people to do for you, then grab the initiative and do it for them. Listen, you want to find the perfect one? You want to meet that kind of love of your life? Listen, it starts with you first being that person. Being the person that you want to find. Taking the initiative to do the things. So often, not sitting back like Adam and blaming all the problems, blaming all the issues, putting all the expectations on the other person, but instead raising the expectations on yourself. Taking the initiative. I mean, imagine in your relationship, imagine in your marriage, if both of you, rather than pointing at the other person, rather than blaming the other person, you actually took initiative. You took the initiative to sit there and say, rather than pointing at their fault, I'm going to start to take an effort and make an effort to be the person that I would hope that they would ultimately become. To be the person that I would hope I could ultimately find. I mean, imagine for a second a marriage where there's just two people trying to outserve each other. Oh, hey, you're going to make, no, I'll make dinner tonight, not you. Oh, you're going to do dishes? No, I'm going to step in there. I'll do the dishes. Where you beat the other person to the punch on stuff. See, there's, if you want to, and again, especially singles, you want to find that perfect person, and again, you want to kind of rediscover your spouse and kind of the 80 in their life. Listen, there's two questions you got to ask, and then there's one response to it, and that is that you got to ask the question, what do you want others to do for you when it comes to your relationship, when it comes to your spouse? And then what do you want others to be for you? And then you just beat them to the punch. You take the initiative. You do those things. You take that step. Even if that step is again requiring you to say something, do something, even before they've ever done anything to earn that apology, to earn that kindness, to earn that act of generosity. In fact, that's what we see as we kind of start to wrap up this story right here. And this is, again, kind of the really beautiful kind of turning point. And we see it in Genesis chapter 3, verse 20. It says, then the man Adam named his wife Eve because she would be the mother of all who live. I love that. See, think about this. The last time he was talking about her, he was describing her failure. But notice the shift. I'm going to stop describing her failure, and I'm going to start declaring her future. Verse 20, then the man Adam named his wife Eve. Before she ever did anything, before she ever, sat there and apologized or did this or tried to do something to kind of earn that kindness. No, he took the first step before she ever did anything. Listen, you want to give birth to something, not just bitter fruit, but actually something sweet, something life-giving in your relationship. You got to learn to prophesy over your spouse's future. Instead of describing their failures, you got to make a decision. Either I'm going to eat the fruit of my description of the fruit or of my declaration, and not describe simply all their failures, all their mistakes, but I'm going to start declaring their goodness, start declaring the 80% in their life, start declaring the future, who God's made them to be, who God's created them to be, start declaring God's word over their life, because whatever you speak will grow. Whatever you speak will grow. And listen, this is so vital for us. I want to kind of wrap up with a story, because listen, for some of you, this is not so much words you need to speak over your spouse, but for you, it's the words you speak over your own heart about your spouse. See, for some of you, it's like, yeah, okay, that's great. The words I speak over my relationship will determine whether it's sweet, whether it's bitter, whether it's life, whether it's death. But what do you do when you're just not feeling it? What do you do when your just heart is just, you thought, man, they've done this.